Good morning, Bayside. Folsom. It's so good to be with you on Resurrection Sunday. I love Easter. I hope that you do too. If you don't, maybe you will by the end of the service. Here's the good news, me being with you as a guest. If you don't like me, you can still come back because Brandon is great. I am like the family member that shows up to your big family gathering and you're not actually sure if they're related to anybody, but they come and they eat the food. That's me, and I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to eat your food. We're going to be jumping into the Easter story. Like Josh said, my name's Cameron. If we haven't met one of the pastors around here, my wife, Charmaine, she's on the worship team over at Bayside Adventure. We got 2 young kids, Carter and Zaya, and just thrilled to be here. Love Easter and hope that we all leave here a little bit more encouraged than when we came in. But I also know this, in a room this size, that probably there's a good chunk of people who walked into the room and you know that Easter Sunday is a really big deal, whether you're into the Jesus thing or not. You know that it's a time of celebration. Everybody's happy. People are smiling. But maybe you walked in the room this morning and you're feeling like you're at less than 100%. And I want you to know that you're in good company. My entire family is a little bit sick right now. And we take our Easter family pictures before Easter weekend because by the end of Easter weekend, our kids are no longer human beings. And so we like to get ahead of that and take it when they're still like happy, but they're all sick. So nobody's feeling good. So we're getting them into the car and they're like, we don't want to go. We don't want to dress up. We don't want to take pictures. And I'm like, get in the car and take your Easter pictures and look happy. I'm a pastor, so you have to look happy. And so if and when you see my family's photos, just know that behind every one of our kids' smiles is a coerced threat. But we came into the weekend a little less than 100%, and I want you to know, if you're walked in here this morning and you're a little less than 100%, I want you to know that this space, this place, it's okay to not be okay. And not only that, but this is the best place that you could be to not be okay. This is the best place if you are struggling through some things in life. This is the best place to bring it. Don't let everybody else's nice clothes fool you. We're all a wreck, okay? We're all a wreck. You may not have known the words to the song and everybody else did. Their life's a wreck. Their kids were throwing a fit. We're all a wreck, and yet we come to celebrate the only one who ever came and was not a wreck, and his name is Jesus on this Resurrection Sunday. That's what we're here for. So if you walked in and you're a little less than 100%, you're in good company, and I want you to know that we're glad that you're here to celebrate the day that changed everything forever. So we're going to jump into the Easter story. Luke chapter 24 is where we're going to be. If you have your Bibles, we're going to start in verse 1. If you don't, they're going to be up on the screens behind me. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He's not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee? The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the 3rd day raised again." Then they remembered his words. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. This is the story of Easter. One thing that I forgot to do, can we just make some noise for everybody watching out in the lobby right now? There's over 100 people out in the lobby. We're glad that you're here. Don't feel like you're missing out in the lobby. You're just getting away from being spit on by me. This is the Easter story. This is the resurrection story. 3 women come to the tomb, Mary, Joanna, and Mary, and Jesus is not there. And then they go back and tell the disciples, and the disciples don't believe them. And what's crazy is we often think of the Easter story as like Jesus dies, rises again, and then everybody's like, this is awesome. He's back. Let's go tell everybody. And that's not at all how the Easter story goes. Nobody believes it. And not only does not everybody believe it, but like people are scared. They're like, what's going on? And a lot of times we think everybody in Christianity was just like down from the jump. And it's like, that's not the case at all. They didn't believe it either. And so if you're a skeptic and you're like, man, I don't know how I feel about this Jesus thing, you're in good company. His followers didn't know how they felt about this. His followers were like, yeah, I don't believe you. And here's what's even crazier, is who Jesus revealed his resurrection to first. So what you have to understand about the early centuries culturally at this time was that women were seen as secondary citizens, basically. They were seen as less than. Their role was in the home. Men kind of ran society. This is where culture was at. And in fact, they were seen as unreliable witnesses. So their testimony wouldn't even hold up in court because they were not seen as credible. Now, women, I need you to know, it's not because you are unreliable. It's because culturally that's where things were. And I know this because I know what unreliable witnesses look like because I live with two of them. We have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. I hear a crash in our kid's bedroom and I walk in there and I'm like, what happened? And my 6-year-old's like, well, Dad, this is what happened. I was sitting in my chair. I was reading the dictionary. I was just teaching myself. I was learning. And Zaya, his little 4-year-old sister, he was like, she pushed over the bookshelf. I'm like, that bookshelf is 200 pounds. And he's like, she did it. She got really red in the face. She pushed it over. And then a bunch of coyotes ran through the room. That's why my clothes are everywhere. And I was just sitting here reading the dictionary, Dad. This is what happened. I'm like, I know what unreliable witnesses look like, sound like, talk like. I live with them. I'm like, you are not reliable. All the time, my wife and I, we come to our kids and we're like, your mother and I have spoken, and we would love for you to no longer act in this way. And our kids look at us and they say, we have taken your concerns into consideration, and we are going to be even more unhinged from here on out. And so I live with this every day of my life. The women were seen as unreliable, not because women are unreliable, not because women are second-rate citizens, but culturally, this is where things stood. So, if you were making up a story about a king and a Messiah who is coming to save his people, and you wanted that news to spread, the very last people that you would choose to reveal it to first would be women. And yet, who does Jesus reveal the resurrection to first? 3 women. It makes no sense. But God always has a plan. And God is always working and moving in things that don't make sense. And God is always elevating those who need to be elevated. He's always seeing those who are unseen. And he is always working in the lives and stories of people who feel unnoticed and forgotten. And on Resurrection Sunday, Jesus shows up and reveals himself to 3 women. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James. Mary Magdalene, if you've been around church for a little while, you've probably heard that name. She's got a weird last name. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary the mother of James. Mary the mother of James is easy because Mary is also the mother of Jesus. So you have Mary Magdalene, who's around a lot, Mary the mother of James, Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary the mother of James. Who is Joanna? So literally the event that is going to change human history forever. And you've got Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Jesus, and Joanna. And you're like, who is Joanna? And why is she here? And what we find through Joanna's life and through Joanna's story, 3 things that we learn about Joanna that may not just be true of Joanna, but may be true of all of us. Maybe we can find more than just Joanna's story in the resurrection narrative. Maybe we can find our story. The very first thing that we learn about who Joanna is that she is an unlikely name. All the way back in Luke chapter 8, we find out who she is. Luke chapter 8, verse 3, Jesus is walking around doing his thing. And it says, Joanna, the wife of Chuza, the manager of Herod's household, Susanna, and many others, these women were helping to support them out of their own means. So Joanna, the wife of Chuza. Now, Chuza was the household manager of a man named Herod Antipas. So Herod Antipas was king at the time, and he is famous for beheading John the Baptist. So John the Baptist came before Jesus to foretell the coming of Jesus. He was baptizing people, and Herod Antipas was the one who beheaded him. And then on Jesus' way to the cross, Pilate sent Jesus to Herod Antipas, and Herod Antipas beat, mocked, and ridiculed Jesus before sending him back to Pilate. So not a great guy. And Joanna is married to the guy who manages his household. But it gets worse. Herod Antipas is the son of Herod the Great. Herod the Great is famous for being in reign when the foretelling of the Messiah was, the prophecy was starting to get out amongst the people that a Messiah was going to be born. And so he ordered the massacre of every male baby under the age of 2 in Bethlehem to prevent the coming of Jesus. So you have Herod the Great, who massacred every male baby under the age of 2 in Bethlehem. And then you have his son who beheaded John the Baptist, who beat, mocked, and ridiculed Jesus on his way to the cross. And then the guy that works for that guy is Joanna's husband. It's not looking very good for you, Joanna. And it brings me back to the question, why is Joanna in this story? She is a very unlikely name. This is not who you would think to run into in the resurrection narrative. The woman married to the man who works for an evil guy who's the son of an even more evil guy. Like, Joanna's on the wrong team. And yet she's one of the first people that Jesus reveals the resurrection to. Why? Because what we're about to see in Joanna's story is that when you run into love, real love, anything can change. Anything can happen. When you run into and experience and witness and come face to face with real love, things in your life, things in your story begin to change. I told my wife when we first got married, I said, you can live with me or you can live with a cat. Under no circumstances will you have both under one roof. And so we've had our cat for about 5 months. And can I just be honest? Can I just be honest on Easter Sunday? I hate this cat. And I think the cat knows that I hate it because I'm the one that he comes to for affection. And he purrs and rubs up on my leg. And I'm like, I'm going to punt you, cat. And I hate this cat. But we got the cat because my son has been begging for a cat. And I'll be honest with you, watching my son love this cat is starting to change the way that I see this cat. This cat is constantly in my son's arms. He is swaddling and holding this cat at all times, loving on this cat, pouring out his affection on this cat. I have 3,000 pictures and videos of this cat on my phone, not because I took them, but because he takes my phone and then he takes them. And it's him laying under the bed. It's him eating and drinking his water and food. A few pictures of his butt. It's all on there because my son is so overcome with love for this cat. And watching my son love this cat starts to change the way that I see this cat. Like a few months ago, my son asked me, he said, Dad, is Joey going to heaven? Joey's the name of the cat, human name, very confusing. He said, Dad, is Joey going to heaven? And 6 months ago, I would have said, not only is that cat not going to heaven, Carter, that cat's going to hell. I'm positive of it. But watching my son love this cat has changed the way that I see this cat. And now my son asks me, he goes, Dad, is Joey going to heaven? I'm like, I think so, son. I think he will be there standing with us in glory. And he will be redeemed. And he will be a dog. I think it's so. But real love changes things, doesn't it? And watching my son pour out real sacrificial love on this cat has changed the way that I see this cat. And though Joanna is a very unlikely name, married to a guy who works for the guy who is everything that is Jesus is not, when she runs into the love of Jesus, as we're about to see, her story changes forever. Because you cannot encounter and experience the love of Jesus and not change. And so as we see that Joanna is an unlikely name, the love of Jesus, as she encounters it, begins to change who she is. But we also see this through the life of Joanna, is that you may not be on his team, but Jesus is already on your team. You may not be on his side, but he is already on your side. And though Joanna was affiliated with people who were against Jesus, Jesus was already on Joanna's team. Jesus was already on Joanna's side. And so if you feel like you walked in the room this morning and you're like, I don't know how God would feel if he knew that I was here. Because I don't know if he would approve of the life that I live outside of this building on Sunday. I want you to know that you may not be on his side, but he is on your side. You may not be on his team, but he is already on your team. That's the story of Easter, is that he was on your team before you were ever on his. Joanna is an unlikely name. Look what it says in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, very famous verse. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Don't read what it doesn't say. It does not say that all things are good. And a lot of well-meaning Christians have done a lot of damage with this verse because we're walking through divorce, we're walking through the loss of a loved one, we're walking through job loss, and then those Christians come around, they're like, well, you know, God works all things for the good. You're like, but this doesn't feel very good right now. But that's not what it says. One way I like to explain this verse is that God doesn't cause all things, but he is in all things. God didn't cause the pain in your life, but if you let him, he will be in the pain in your life and he will work it towards good. He doesn't cause all things, but he's in all things. The question is, will you give him all things? Because we love to pick and choose what we will give God authority over in our lives. And Joanna, though she's on the wrong team, married to the wrong guy who works for the wrong guy, experiences the love of Jesus. And though she is an unlikely name, God begins to work all of those things for the good. And we often leave out the very last part of this, according to his purpose. You see, anytime I expect God to work out the good according to Cameron's purpose, I'm going to be disappointed. But here's what you have to understand, is that I don't even know what is always good for me. I look back at the prayers that I prayed in high school, the girl that I wanted to marry in high school, and I look at it today and I'm like, thank God he didn't answer that prayer request. Like, I don't even know what's always good for Cameron. But it's not according to Cameron's will, it's according to his will. And when my son asks me at 7 a.m, Dad, can we have ice cream? Though every fiber of my being wants to say, yes, don't tell your mother, I have to say no. Because my will and purpose for my son's life right now is actually greater than his. That I actually want better things for my son than he does for himself. And one day that will change, but until it does, I have to say yes to things, I have to say no to things, because my will and purpose for his life is greater than his. What is the story of Joanna? What is the story of Scripture? What is the story of Easter? That God's will and purpose for your life is greater than yours. That he wants good things for his children. And even though you've walked through some pain, you've walked through some brokenness, he works all things for the good according to his purpose. The question is, will you give him all things? Joanna is an unlikely name, but she's not just an unlikely name. Joanna is also a forgotten name. And I can tell you that with confidence because I've been in church most of my life. I've been preaching for most of my life, and I never knew that Joanna was in this story. Joanna is a forgotten name, just wedged in there. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary, the mother of Jesus. And maybe that's how you feel walking into church today. Maybe you haven't been in church in years. Maybe this is your first time in church. And you feel like Joanna's story is your story. You know, Cameron, I am an unlikely name. All the people in this room, I'm the least likely person to roll up to church, and yet here I am. Or maybe you feel like, yeah, Cameron, I feel like I've been forgotten. I feel like I've been overlooked. I feel like I've been unseen. Maybe Joanna's story is your story. Joanna's story is certainly my story. When I was 15 years old, my parents started fighting, and I grew up in a Christian home. My dad was a pastor, and so this was very unusual. And they started fighting a lot, and over time, the fights got bigger and louder and more frequent, and I was trying to make sense of why is this happening, that our family got less and less stable, and things started to get crazier and crazier. When I was 15 years old, my dad sat me down, and he said, Cameron, your mom and I are getting a divorce. He said, and by the way, all of this is your fault. And at 15 years old, I ran away from home because I could not handle the weight of that. I couldn't figure out what is so broken in me that I'm breaking my family. I said, I can't even fix me, much less fix my family. 2 years later, I got kicked out of the house. I lived out of my car for a little bit. I couch surfed for a little bit. Didn't know where my next meal was coming from. And I remember in those seasons looking up at God and saying, really, God? Is this what I get for loving you? Is this what I get for following you? I've been faithful. I've been committed. Now I've got no father. I've got no place to call home. I don't know where my next meal is coming from. Like, is this what my faith gets me? And just like Joanna, I felt unlikely, but I felt forgotten. And more than forgotten, I felt abandoned. I felt rejected. I felt unseen, unloved, and unwanted. And I would love to tell you that the words that my father spoke to me that day stayed at 15. But those of us who have walked through some stuff know that it never stays where it started. And those words have followed me every season of my life. And there have been many seasons I've walked out on a stage to preach about the goodness of God, and somewhere in the back of my head is a little voice that says, really, Cameron? Your own father didn't want you. Maybe Joanna's story is a lot of our story. Maybe you feel forgotten. Maybe you feel left behind. Maybe you feel rejected. And I know that in a room this size, one of the difficult realities of life is that our earthly parents often shape our view of God. And so it's hard to see God as a good father because you didn't have a good dad. And it can be hard to see God as a good father because you didn't have a good mom. One of my pastors says it like this. He says that God is not the reflection of your earthly father. He's the perfection of your earthly father. God is not the reflection of your earthly mother. He's the perfection of your earthly mother. What does that mean? Is that if you were abandoned, if you were rejected, if you were left out, forgotten, unseen, unwanted, or felt unloved, everything that they were not, God is. And when they left you behind, God came to you. And this is the story of Easter, that he saw you in your mess, in your brokenness, and said, I will do anything to bring you into my family. And everything that your parents were not, God is. And everything that they could not be, he is, and he will be. And so if you walked into this room and you feel forgotten, you're in good company. But just know that if you feel like you're an unlikely name and an unlikely story, and you feel like you've been a little bit forgotten, everything will change when you come face to face with the person of Jesus. And this is what happened in Joanna's story. And I think for a lot of us, my fear is that we come to church on Easter and we go, yeah, God saved me. But if he actually knew like that I was here, there was a lot of people trying to get in the room. There's a lot of people sitting in the room like, God, if God knew that I was here, he wouldn't be that happy. When I was in high school, another public confession, I went to a midnight premiere at a theater, and the movie was awful. And so I walked out of the movie 30 minutes in. And as I walked out of the theater, there were people lining up for another movie that I wanted to see. And so I just looked around and I just got into line with the people and I just walked into the theater. But then I couldn't enjoy the movie because then the entire time I'm sitting there thinking, if somebody knew I was here, I don't belong here. And how often do we feel that way in church? If God knew that I was here, he wouldn't want me here. if all these good, pretty people got all dressed up on Easter, who knew the words to the song, whose kids behaved, like if they knew what I was doing even 24 hours ago, they wouldn't want me here. Certainly wouldn't want to be sitting next to me. Don't look at the person next to you. Like somehow we think that we just kind of evaded God's eye. He died for everybody. But what I need you to understand, what Joanna learned in this resurrection story, is that God doesn't see you because he saved you. He saved you because he sees you. He saw your mess. He saw your brokenness. He saw your pain first. That's why he came. That's the whole reason behind Easter. And so if you feel unlikely, if you feel forgotten, if you feel unseen, if you feel overlooked, he sees you and he came for you. And his love will change everything if you let him. And this is the culmination of Joanna's story. You see, not only is she an unlikely name, not only is she a forgotten name, but because she met Jesus, she was a changed name. Joanna's whole legacy and lineage was in opposition to who Jesus was. She was married to the wrong guy, who worked for the wrong guy, who was the son of the wrong guy. And in fact, culturally, we see that she was lowly, unreliable, and not always faithful. But then we have the person of Jesus who is risen and reliable and always faithful. Look what it says in 2 Timothy chapter 2. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot disown himself. This is good news, church, because God's goodness does not depend on your goodness, and his faithfulness does not depend on my faithfulness. So when I fall short, he keeps showing up. And when I can't get it right, he does. And when I can't love enough or do enough or be enough or know enough, God is still enough. Because he is still good even when my life is not. This is the person that Joanna encounters on Easter Sunday. So the question has to be asked. Why was Joanna, this unlikely forgotten name, why was she at the tomb that morning with Mary and Mary? Why was she there? They were there to present incense and an offering to the body. Why was Joanna there? This woman who was on the wrong team, married to the wrong guy. Look what it says all the way back in Luke chapter 8. Jesus is walking around teaching and healing. In Luke chapter 8, verse 2, it says this, and also some women who had been cured of evil spirits and diseases. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had come out, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, the manager of Herod's household. Joanna showed up at the tomb that day because Jesus had healed her all those months before. And so she said, I'm coming to love on the body in death because he changed me in life. And notice when we first meet Joanna in Luke chapter 8, it says Joanna, the wife of Chuza. She's defined by who she's married to. And then fast forward to Luke chapter 24 when it says Mary, and Mary came to the tomb. Who's with her? Joanna. Just Joanna, meaning she's no longer defined by who she's married to. Meaning you are no longer defined by who you're related to. You're no longer defined by what you've done or what's been done to you. We are only defined by what God has done for us. And that was to climb on to the cross, to bear the weight of sin and death for you and I. And through that love, through that sacrifice, Joanna is no longer an unlikely name, no longer a forgotten name. She is a changed name. And notice this, that the message of Easter, the promise of the gospel, is not that pain and suffering won't be part of your story. The promise of the gospel is that pain and suffering won't be the end of your story. That because of the cross, the worst thing will no longer be the last thing. And when you come face to face with the love of Jesus, everything will change. I remember a few years ago, I was fixing a shelf in our kids' room, and I was sitting on the floor. It was an IKEA shelf that had broken off the wall. I was like, I got this, babe. Don't call anybody. because that's about my level of DIY. And so I'm on the floor and I'm fixing this shelf. And I fix the shelf, I put it back up on the wall, and then I feel this little 3-year-old hand on my shoulder. It was my son. And I didn't realize he had been watching me the entire time. And you know, growing up, there's a lot of things that I never heard my father say. And so the day my son was born, I promised myself, my son will hear me say these things, because I want him to hear his father say these things. So every day of that kid's life, I say, Carter, I'm so proud of you. Carter, I love you. I finished fixing that shelf. I put it back up on the wall. I finished anchoring it to the wall. And then I felt a 3-year-old hand on my shoulder. And I turn around and my 3-year-old son looks me in the eyes and he says, Dad, I'm so proud of you. And I just start weeping. Like I am ugly crying on the floor of my kid's room. And my son is like, I thought that was a good thing. Dad says this to me all the time. Why is this a bad thing? And I'm just weeping. But I wasn't crying because it hurt. I wasn't crying because I was reminded of how forgotten I felt by my dad. I was crying because I felt so seen by God in that moment. That somehow, by some grace, by some love, by some mercy, he has allowed me to experience the love of a father through the love of a son. And when my son looked me in the eyes, he said, Dad, I'm so proud of you. I realized that I spent my whole life trying to earn my father's love, and here my son, it just gives it freely. There is nothing I need to do for that kid's love. And when you come face to face with Jesus, when you come face to face with the gospel, we are reminded that there is nothing you need to do to earn that love. There is nothing you need to do to earn that forgiveness. And this is what Joanna experienced that Easter Sunday. That no longer was she defined by who she was married to. No longer are you defined by who you're related to. No longer are you defined by what you've done or what's been done to you. We are only defined by what he has done for us. And church, I want to tell you today, if he is who he says he is, then I am who he says I am. A child of God. And if that grave is empty, my guilt is empty. And if that grave is empty, my shame is empty. And if that grave is empty, my past is empty. Because he paid for it on the cross and he has wiped it clean. And so now I'm no longer an unlikely name. I am no longer a forgotten name. I am a changed name. Because I met Jesus. And I wonder if this morning you want to meet him too. Would you pray with me? God, thank you for Easter. Thank you for the gift of your son. Thank you that you saw us, that you came for us, that you weren't leaving without us. And God, in the seasons of life where we feel unlikely, in the seasons of life we feel forgotten, I pray that you will remind us of the truth of Easter Sunday, that you were always coming for us. You always have. And you always will, because you are a good father who wants good things for your children. I want to give you an opportunity this morning to say yes to Jesus. If you've never made that decision, I want to invite you to stop trying to white knuckle your way through life. Stop trying to know enough, be enough, do enough. There is nothing you can do to earn what he has already given you. And I want to give you an opportunity this morning to say yes to a God who has already said yes to you. And if you feel like you're not worthy of what he's done, I want to remind you the truth of Easter, that you never have to question where you stand with a God who is willing to die for you. So if that's you, If you're ready to let go of the past this morning, if you're ready to say yes to a new hope, to a new future, wherever you're at, in the room, out in the lobby, with every head bowed and every eye closed, I'm going to count to 3 in just a second. All I want you to do, if you are ready to say yes to Jesus, is just slip up your hand wherever you're at, not to embarrass you, not to call you out. I just want to pray with you. I want to pray for you, and I want to pray over you. If you're in this room and you have reached the bottom and you are so aware that there's nothing that you can do to climb out, I want to invite you to grab hold of the truth of Easter. That you don't have to climb out of the hole that you've created. He's already climbed in to pull you out. Will you say yes to a God who has already said yes to you? If you are ready to say yes to Jesus this morning, 1, 2, 3. Wherever you're at in this room, just slip up your hand. Wherever you're at, if you are ready to say yes to Jesus, yeah. I got you. Yeah. Right over there, I got you. Yeah. Come on, right down here. Yeah, in the back. Come on. Yeah, over here, I got you. Hey, if you raised your hand, or even if you didn't, but you made that decision, I want to invite you in this moment to pray this prayer with me. It's not about getting the words exactly right. This is a moment between you and God. Pray this prayer with me. Dear Jesus, I'm a sinner, and I cannot do this on my own. Today I receive your love. I receive your forgiveness. Jesus, come into my life and lead my life for all the days of my life. God, we give all of this to you. In your beautiful name we pray. Amen.